All right, so hello everybody. It's episode 26 of the More Knowledge Show. Today is March 27th or the 28th. Anyway, I mean, it seems like this current month has been going on for an extremely long amount of time. Usually, the first few months of the year go by extremely fast, but for this year, I mean, like, if you think about it, a lot has happened in these first 3 months, and I've talked about this before, but back in the last episode I actually started off talking about this. But in the beginning of the year, the big thing was World War III and how everyone was going to be drafted into the war and how it was so terrible, but now, a few years, I mean, like, it feels like a few years, but just a few months, all of a sudden it's like completely different. I mean, just in a matter of a few weeks, we went from an economy at like full employment, people, we just came off a pretty good corporate earnings season. Stocks were hitting all-time highs, and then a few weeks later, all of a sudden, cities are shut down. It's pretty apocalyptic. I mean, I'm outside right now. I guess from where I'm living, I don't really see the worst of it because I'm not living in a big city. Of course, if you live in a big city, that's where the virus is going to affect you the most, and that's where the shutdowns are the most substantial. But like in a place like New York, for example, within a few weeks they went from just as usual New York City, and now it's like complete. The only sound you hear are probably ambulances. I heard the 911 calls in New York City are at a level not seen since 9/11, and it's an everyday thing. And not only that, I mean, the amount of people that are actually dying in these hospitals are also reaching pretty high levels. Like, I'm hearing stuff like there's not even enough space to store all the bodies. So it's a scenario like this has only been replicated in Hollywood. Like, a nationwide shutdown up to this magnitude where people are dying, where people are getting sick. Like, we've only seen stuff like this in Hollywood, really. And now it's actually happening. Like, I would just say this, like, what's going on right now is going to go down as one of the most notable historical events in American history. Like, you're always living in history, but right now, like, you are really experiencing something that's history changing on a variety of levels. But I also want to reiterate the same thing I've been saying for a while, but I think it's worth repeating again and again and again, because the more this virus progresses, the more the virus kind of takes up all the attention of the people and kind of makes them think that the virus is the source of everything wrong with this world. I don't think people actually believe that, but that's kind of how people's brains have become trained to think. Is that once this virus goes away, all of a sudden the economy will just turn right back on. People will receive their jobs back. People will start spending money the way they used to. Everything will just function right as it did prior to the virus. But I just want to remind people, prior to the virus, there was still a lot of problems. There was, in fact, a ton of problems. I think people were underlooking the amount of problems that were going on in our world. The stock market was certainly not pricing it in. I was talking about in the first few episodes of the year, I was constantly saying how some of the biggest risks this year were the election. That's a big source of uncertainty because, whenever you have an election, you don't know who's going to be elected, and whoever's elected, that has a big effect on policy. And if you're a company, you can't anticipate what the policies are going to be, then it's harder to plan. That's just my gate. I think it's probably a ghost or something, but it's harder to plan. When it's harder to plan, you can't make investments. So I think something like the election could kind of slow down the economy. We saw that in Britain, in fact. Leading up to the election, there was a lot of uncertainty, and that kind of slowed the economy down. But of course, once the election happened, the economy picked up again. But I'm sure the economy in Britain isn't doing too good now either. But I was talking about that. I was talking about Brexit. You know, they still have to make a deal by the end of the year. If they have a shaky ending, that could cause turmoil in Europe. And, you know, of course, with a global economy, you know, stress in one area kind of spreads around the entire world. Financial contagion works in similar ways to a pandemic does. So, but in fact, it actually probably spreads much quicker. So you have stress in one area financially, you're gonna have stress here too. That's what happened in the 2008 crisis. We had a financial contagion. So the financial system all over the world collapsed, pretty much. And that could, you know, happen if there's a big shock in some other place. You had the thing with Hong Kong and China. If that escalated, you had the U.S. and China trade war, which is far from over. Not just the U.S. and China trade war. The U.S. was starting conflicts with Europe. They were starting conflicts with India. You know, you had a whole... The United States, prior to the start of the coronavirus, people forget, but the U.S. was like, we were pretty much going after everybody. You know, like, we were trying to start trade wars with everybody. And, you know, even now, with the coronavirus, you would think that it would bring the world together, right? Because people are trying to fight this virus. And to some extent, that is going on. But, I mean, the U.S. and China have their relations, you know, it really hasn't improved. It's gotten worse, I would argue. I mean, there is some levels of collaboration on the virus, but still, you know, the U.S. is blaming China. China's blaming the U.S. They're kicking reporters out of each other's countries. The United States is restarting their attack on Huawei. And, I mean, if we're attacking one major Chinese phone company, nearly every Chinese company has that same security risk attached to it because they're all attached to the Chinese government. So if we can't trust Huawei, what makes us think that we're going to start opening up, you know, trade with this country? Until we really try to force substantial change on their underlying structure. And that's going to cause a major conflict. But of course now, you know, no one's thinking about it. All people are thinking about the coronavirus. And even after that, I mean, well, even before, you know, the health of the economy, there is a large levels of corporate debt and all of these things that are now, you know, that are now being shown that people underlooked. And even once the virus subsides and goes away, all those economic problems aren't just going to leave. They're still going to be there. There's still going to be liabilities and obligations that need to be paid, and it's going to keep the economy contracted for a long time. So I just want to say that. Because, you know, the stock market will rally. The stock market will rally a lot. All right, I'm guaranteeing you this right now. Oh, that's a person out there. But yeah, like, I can pretty much put a high level of certainty on the fact that the stock market's going to rise. Okay, because when you have interest rates at about 0%, when you have all this liquidity flowing into the system, the moment people get confident because the number of cases start going down, the stock market will rise a lot. Okay, so I will say that, but the economy is completely separate, and we just need to always remember that, always be aware, always look at the full picture, and always think long term. And another thing I want to talk about real quick, I'm gonna try to make this episode shorter, by the way, so it's probably gonna be around, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes. I don't really want to make too long episodes anymore. It's a little bit too much. But anyway, so another thing I want to talk about is the House just recently passed the spending bill. It's going to be like over $2 trillion. It's probably not going to be the last spending bill. It's going to require a lot more spending because it's going to be a lot of companies and a lot of individuals that need to pretty much be saved and bailed out. But it's going to cause a lot of strain on the budget deficits. And I've talked about this before, of course, but I really just want to go further into why this is a problem. Because we live in a time now where I think a lot of people are thinking that it's not really an issue anymore, because you look at how high the level of debts are, and people make the argument, well, as long as interest rates stay low, then we should be fine. Okay, but I mean, that's kind of a silly argument, because you're fine until you're not fine. All right, your interest rates are low until they're not low. People are confident in your government, confident in your government solvency, confident in your currency until they're not. And once they're not, and you've put yourself in a hole so deep, how can you recapture that confidence? How can you regain your, creditworthiness when you're already in such a deep hole? So, it's assuming that nothing's going to happen that's going to just shock everything, and all of a sudden interest rates are spiking up, and already, we have massive amounts of debts, and then that's going to cause major financial problems for the government, and that's going to destroy our economy pretty much. But the reason why people don't like politicians, it's politically unpopular to talk about ways to reduce the debts of the government. And the reason why is that it either requires you to raise taxes or cut spending. And I think the best solution is a combination of both. Okay, of course, you need to fix the entire tax system, because there's too many people that are getting out of paying taxes. Like, if we could just get some more people who should be paying taxes just to pay a small percentage, we could get a lot more tax revenue. All right, that's the first thing. And the second thing about cutting spending, it's not that I'm opposed to government spending. It's just that we do spend in a lot of areas that are kind of wasteful. Like if you're spending money on, let's say, like subsidies or something like that to help some corporation, or you're spending money in ways that don't really benefit the majority of people, all of that should be cut out. So, but in order to have something like that done, you're going to upset some people. There's going to be some people who were winning before and aren't going to get those same gains from the government. And those people who support these politicians aren't going to support them no more. All right, the people who have to pay higher taxes, they're not going to like that. And it's just politically unpopular. It's a politically unpopular thing to do, but it's a necessary thing to do. Okay, because the effects, people always think that, yeah, a crash might happen, but that's going to happen like 20 years from now. All right, in the long run, we're all dead. But, of course, 20 years from now, it's going to be our generation that's going to be in power. I'm a pretty young person. I'm like 16 years old. 20 years from now, I'm going to be 36. So it's going to be, we are going to be the ones who have to solve this problem years from now. And of course, people who are congressmen now, they're like 80 years old. So 20 years from now, they're either going to be extremely old to where it doesn't matter to them, or they're going to be dead. All right, so so you kind of have this problem, this mismatch of incentives and what is required to keep the country on good financial standing. But pretty much, eventually, if the debt gets too high, what's going to happen is, you're going to have to spend a lot more interest payments. The more you spend on interest payments, the less you spend into the actual economy. Also, eventually, if your debt goes to extremely high levels, and let's say a crisis happens, they'll eventually come to a point where the debt is too big. People are not going to want to loan money to us anymore. And when people do not want to loan money to us anymore, well, two things happen. Interest rates rise. That's going to hurt the economy. People can't get funding. And also, inflation. The currency is going to lose its value. People are going to try to hop out of the dollar, and that's going to lower the value of the dollar. That's going to raise prices. That's going to cause a currency crisis, pretty much. A crash. People are going to try to do whatever to get out of, our bonds, our debt, or our currency. And when that happens, it's going to be a psychological shift All right, it's nothing that you can really predict because it's based all on human emotion. But I mean, once people start selling, that fear of losing is going to kick in. People are going to get scared, and they're all just going to completely sell everything. But if that, if that happens to the stock market, it's like, it's not quite big of a deal, okay? But the thing is, if that happened to our government, if people lose confidence in our government overnight, they stop loaning money to the government, they lose confidence in the government, they lose confidence in our dollar, that's going to affect the very fabric of this country, okay? And the thing is, I understand the spending that we're doing now, it's required. But the issue is, we didn't put ourselves in a position to be able to spend a few trillion more dollars because we've already been, our debt has already been way out of control even before the crisis began. And now our debt's going to get even bigger to a level that we're not going to be able to recover. And when the next crisis comes, who knows, it could be the one to tip everything off balance. And that would be catastrophic. So I just want to say that because we really need to change our mentality. We need to change our mentality. We need to think more long term, and we need to start coming up with ways to align incentives with what needs to be done. So if we need to reduce our deficits to protect the economy and our country years from now, it is necessary we do it. Now, of course, we can't do it right now. And what I'm worried about is that it may be too late. So anyway, that's today's episode of the More Knowledge Show. Like I said, we're trying to make it a little bit shorter so people aren't scared from these 30-minute videos. I'm not sure how long this one's going to be, but it probably is not as long as it usually is. Anyway, I'll see y'all soon. I guess stay safe.